then I will offer a word of prayer and we can jump in. God, thank you for gathering us tonight for this conversation. We pray for learning and open hearts and open minds and the discernment of your spirit in this space. Thank you for our guests, and thank you for the opportunity to learn from them tonight. Open our ears and our hearts to hear what you would have us hear. In Christ's name, I pray. Amen. Kelly, let me turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you guys for joining us in this third of our series. We have one more next week as well, but I want to start by having Sue and Sonja introduce themselves, let you know what organizations they're with, and a little bit about the organizations they're with in case you aren't familiar with the amazing work that they're doing in the community. So Sue, you came off mute, so let's start with you.
I'm Sue Breitkopf, and I'm Chief Development Officer for Woodley House, which was founded in Woodley Park in 1958 to provide housing and services for adults with mental health disorders. So now, since 1958, we have established more 24-hour care group homes, and we have a crisis stabilization program also based in Woodley Park, and then we have an apartment program as well. And then a food pantry that is run out of one of our Woodley Park locations as well. And yeah, really happy to be here and happy that we can be discussing this topic with you all.
Thank you, Sue. Sonja?
Hi, everyone. My name is Sonja Allen. I am the Executive Director at Friends of Guest House. We are located in Alexandria, Virginia. We have two residential facilities, one in the Old Town neighborhood and one in the Delray neighborhood of Alexandria. Friends of Guest House is the only prison to community reentry program in Northern Virginia, and is actually the largest in the state that's tailored towards women's needs. And so what we do is our mission is to provide formerly incarcerated women with the structure, supervision, and support that they need in order to reintegrate back into the community. We are an organization of second chances. And so we believe that these women who have histories of trauma, backgrounds in various nonviolent offenses, that they deserve a second chance to be reintroduced to the community, reconnect with their families, and just become well-rounded citizens of the community. And we were founded in 1974, so next year we'll be celebrating a 50th anniversary, which we're very excited about. We were founded by a fellow member of the community who herself is a federal parolee. She came out, she had all of the resources that she needed in order to be successful on her reentry plan. While she was very fortunate in that way, she recognized that maybe perhaps her fellow sisters who had similar circumstances would not be as fortunate. So she started Guest House, started out just providing a safe place to live for 8 women. But today we're able to serve 60 to 70 women in a year. And through our full breadth of programming, could reach up to 200 to 300 lives. So we've grown a lot, and we have a lot of growing that we hope to do. And right now, just a little bit about the types of programs that we have. We have 3 primary programs. We have a residential program. This is a 6-month residential program where we can offer a stable, supportive environment, a very homey environment for the women who come directly out of incarceration, can live with us, be hooked up with a case manager who can help them make their reentry plan and check in on that progress. And part of the residential program is also a workforce and life skills development program. where, as the name suggests, they're able to hone in on all those work skills, job seeking skills that they need. But it's also an opportunity for the women to focus on those core areas that led to them being incarcerated in the first place. So we have a lot of evidence-based programming targeted towards coping skills, parenting skills, and various other evidence-based curriculum that we can offer. So that's the residential program. The other two programs are aftercare and outreach. We offer a similar programming in aftercare where the women, after they complete the 6-month program, can then live within the community. We have some limited housing available that we can offer subsidized rent to them. That's a temporary basis. Temporary need. We can meet the temporary need through that housing and just better prepare them to be more self-sufficient when they leave. And then we have the outreach program in which we're able to reach women who don't come into our programming through the residential program. That's as short as I can condense.
Perfect. I love it. It was great. I even learned some new things, and I thought I knew a lot about Friends Guest House. So one of the things that I admire about both Woodley House as well as Friends of the Guest House is, as you talked about, Sonja, is like that homey feel and that creating of that kind of warm environment. So I'm giving away sort of one potential answer to my next question, but what would you guys say is different about the types of programming that you run in your programs from other shelter or residential programs in the community?
All right, I'll kick it off, Sonja, if you don't mind.
Yes.
So I would say that whereas a lot of organizations provide housing and support for people with mental health disorders, that's really what we specialize in. It's what we're really good at. What we've been doing for a long time, is offering this alternative to hospitalization, which is so crucial. It's like so much less expensive. It is, the outcomes are so much better when people are integrated into the community. So, we do that really differently. And then I would say, our crisis stabilization program, which I mentioned before, the model that was started in the 70s. And the model was that, that there's no hierarchy between staff and residents, that, they use the same bathroom, not at the same time. They eat their meals all together. There's just kind of like a family-like environment so that nobody feels like they're less than or othered in any way, just because they have this, their brain is working a little differently. So that really sets us apart. And, that's a model that's been replicated across the country in other similar programs. And even when our particular program veered away from that at different points in time, it wasn't as successful. So we really went back to that model and find great success in it.
And I would add what really makes us unique is that unlike other reentry programs, other than being woman-centered, we are very much focused on connection. So the connection that women feel to the community, the connection that they feel to the new family that they're able to establish at Guest House, and then reconnecting to their families. And so that's really what we're focusing on. We're much more than a halfway house that some people may envision that we are based on. We're much more than that because we focus on that connection, that empowerment of the women, and addressing those issues, like I mentioned before, that led to them being incarcerated in the first place, hoping that we can prevent recidivism. So we focus on education and substance use and housing, of course, and various other issues in order to make sure that we're taking a well-rounded approach to ensuring success for the women in our program.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Last our last session, we heard from some of our guests with lived experience and what they really cared about in programming, and safety was a key resonating message. How does your program ensure the safety and well-being of the individuals who participate in your program, as well as the surrounding neighborhood?
Sonja, I don't want to steal the first slot if you want to go ahead.
I'll go ahead. So safety is something we take very seriously. As far as safety of the women who are participating in our program, we have certain policies and rules in place that sort of guarantee that safety. They're not always looked fondly upon by the women that come into the program, but that is the intention, is to ultimately to keep them safe. So we monitor all the whereabouts at all times of the women. So you have to sign in and sign out. And if you're going somewhere, provide the address. If you have a mentor or someone from your family coming to the house, they have to provide identification and things of that nature. As far as the safety of the community, I would say that's not a huge or significant issue where we are concerned. We're such a fixture in our community that more than likely the people who come to the community or who might have concerns about safety, they're moving into our neighborhood as opposed to us being in their neighborhood. So we really have very positive relationships with the surrounding community. And I can't think of any instance where the safety of the community was an issue that we needed to resolve at all.
And I would add, very similar experience to friends of that. We've been around Woodley Park and we're in other neighborhoods as well, but we've been around Woodley Park for so long that either people know of us and they know that we don't cause any trouble, or they don't even know that we're there, which is kind of also a compliment. But we have some of our programs, they're different levels of supervision. So our crisis stabilization program, if somebody's in, having a psychiatric crisis, their first 24 to 48 hours that they're with us, they need to inform us of their whereabouts, and they're not just, like coming and going as they please. But after that, we treat our residents as adults, and they have day programs, they have jobs, they have things that they, family to see, that they, we respect that they operate like that. And, we do supervise our residents pretty closely and make sure that they're not, not sliding back in their recovery, and, they have all the tools that they need. Excuse, my dog is, always decides when I'm on a Zoom that it's time for her to come in. There occasionally are, I think the only, occasionally with our crisis program, there will be a need for the police, but that's mostly because of, if somebody has left against medical advice and they've gone missing and we want to find them. That's generally kind of what happens. And we haven't really had many, if any, incidents that are, of people being a danger. Because I think the thing that's really important to say, and what we always talk about, is that people with mental health disorders are much more likely to be the victims of crimes than they are to be the perpetrators of crimes. And it doesn't seem like that. Sometimes people who are acting kind of erratically seem dangerous, but I think that there's been kind of a turnaround in the community that I've noticed, that they're more likely to want to reach out to us to say, how can we help? She's really going at it. How can we help this person who is living in her car? Can you provide some resources for us, rather than immediately calling the police?
Well, thank you for sharing that. Do you guys ever, I think you mentioned that you don't hear a lot necessarily. How do you go about addressing concerns or feedback from the neighbors or other community members about the operations of your programming? Do you get that kind of feedback often?
I'll just jump in. The only time that I can recall receiving anything that would even be close to feedback or concerns from neighbors are when we first come into a community. So like I said, we've been 50 years, nearly 50 years at our Luray Avenue, Delray location. We recently moved into another facility in the Old Town neighborhood. So there was this process, hearing process whereby neighbors could provide, their feedback, learn about what type of organization we were. And we were just really pleased that the neighbors from the Delray neighborhood supported what a great organization we are, what great neighbors we are. And sort of like Sue mentioned, some of them didn't even know we were there. And they were like, well, it can't be too bad. We didn't know that they were there, but we're glad to know now. And some of the concerns that our new neighbors brought up were concerns about people hanging around or loitering or sitting on the stoop or smoking. And particularly with the loitering issue, that's just, as part of our policies and procedures, it's just not something that happens at guest house facilities. We don't sit on the stoop and do things like that. We do have events that we invite our neighbors to and welcome them to come be a part of. Smoking is something we're careful about, but it is an issue that we pay close attention to, and to make sure that we're not disturbing the neighbors. But as it turns out, we really only operate efficiently by the volunteer program, and the volunteers are made up of people in the community. So through that, they ultimately feel like part of the organization in the first place. So we really don't have a lot of concerns that we have to address.
And I would say the same thing for our existing programs. I'm kind of preempting a little bit a question that you had further down the line, but we did back in 2020, I will share that we were going to expand our crisis program and had purchased a house. This was just as I was coming on board. I purchased a house in a neighborhood that was somewhat up and coming, like pretty solid from an income basis. And I think there were a lot of mistakes on our end about how we approached it, and the neighborhood backlash was unbelievable and kind of hard to come back from. And so we ended up there was also a regulatory issue. And so we ended up selling the house and vacating that neighborhood. And I think we learned a lot from that, that it's really, really important to have neighborhood buy-in when you're going into that neighborhood, even if it's a matter of right in that house, that you have to get to know the ANC, in DC, the ANC single member district folks, like all of the local election, who are the community leaders and things like that, that it's really crucial to know the neighborhood that you're going into. And so that's how we've operated since then. But it was kind of a hard lesson to learn, and really a shame. We didn't want to bring our residents who, were experiencing a psychiatric crisis into a neighborhood where they might be harassed. It was not going to be a good situation.
So I think, Sonja, you sort of touched on this. When you're building relationships in the community, Sonja, you mentioned events that you do with the neighbors. How do you promote like understanding and support for your program's mission within the community?
I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I have a colleague here, Katie Shapiro. She is our wonderful volunteer and development coordinator, and I think she's well suited to shed some light on that, if she doesn't mind.
Yeah, no worries. So events, particularly something that we just restarted after COVID, was we have open houses over at our Luray House. So every first Thursday of every month, we just started this month, and the women know that it's happening. We don't take them past a certain point, obviously, just for privacy reasons. But neighbors can drop by, have some coffee, ask questions about guest house, get to know some of the ladies if they're out and about, and ask questions and meet staff and go through the house, and they'll go through the back garden. And actually, that's how A few of our neighbors who were like interested in getting re-involved in our volunteer program were able to talk a little bit more about it. Some other events that we have going on, we've had summer barbecues. We've had one big one is our graduation in October, which we tend to invite all of our neighbors to, or our immediate neighbors, especially when it's on site. Or we have a church who we're really close to called Good Shepherd, and they allow us to use their space. And so we invite people in the public in general just to join us. And then we have our like monthly newsletter, which all of our events go out onto. And for the most part, if something is in the newsletter, it's a public event. There might be some internal things, like we had our Mother's Day, like Sunday Fun Day this last Sunday. So that was a little bit more internal, but I feel like, is there, did I answer the question well? Okay, cool. I didn't know if I left out any part of it, but yeah, we have a lot of events, especially the open house allows people to kind of come at their own leisure to ask questions and meet staff. And it's something that a lot of people tend to notice when they walk into Luray is they're like, oh, this is just a normal house. And usually we kind of catch them during dinner time too. So either people are cleaning up after dinner or things like that. So it's very much a normal house.
The beautiful house. I love
Yeah,
it.
they also say that too. They say, God, it's such a beautiful house.
And I would just add, it sounds like you all, like we could learn some things from you all, because we don't do as many kind of public events as that, but we do kind of bring in people through our volunteer programs, like a beautification day. Like we're going to have a group on Friday to do some planting, which the residents really love when we have flowers in the yard. And then also through like regular food drives, kind of bringing people in so they can see the food pantry and take tours and whatnot. And then also just really like what I would call a shoe leather approach. So, having conversations one-on-one, like there's really no replacement for that kind of, meeting people, understanding that people who have mental health disorders are really not that different. Like we're all on a spectrum of our mental health. And, trying to just like not convince people of it, but just kind of have people understand, that these are other human beings. And so just those one-on-one conversations are really critical.
Right. And if I could just piggyback on that just really quickly, just the conversations with the women themselves are really what connect us to the neighbors, because any misconceptions that they have about who a woman is who's formerly incarcerated are corrected or informed when they get to meet these wonderful people that we support. And they're marvelous women, and really they are our best spokespersons any given time. So we rely on them a lot and being out in the community and connecting with our neighbors. So
you guys touched a little bit on this already, but how do you utilize volunteers in your program? And are there other like forms of engagement, just getting folks involved in your programming, and what does that look like?
hit it, Katie.
Okay. So we have basically 3 tracks of volunteers, and they're all, they're not mutually exclusive. So if you're one, you can be all the others as well. So we have what we call our general volunteers, and those are folks with maybe the strictest schedule, who like they can maybe only come in once a month or once a quarter, and they'll help us with different events we're putting on. Or like, for instance, we had a garage clean out, so we had volunteers come out and help us with the garage. The women also joined in. We've had beautification days as well, and so volunteers will come out and do that. That's our general volunteer program, and so it's basically our most flexible program. And then we have our workforce and life development volunteer instructors. So that's more of a skills-based volunteering. So we have our workforce and life development program that runs every day from 9 to 4. And all of those classes are taught by volunteer instructors. And so it's everything from trauma-informed yoga to financial literacy to parenting, anger management, knitting, all of the things that either help you become a well-rounded person or get you interested in different hobbies or just prepare you for life after guest house. And our this is just a spotlight, our coordinator, our workforce and life coordinator. She does a really good job at surveying the women every 4 weeks to figure out what classes they'd be interested in, so we can recruit volunteers that way. So that's a volunteer will dedicate 1 hour a week for 8 weeks on and then 8 weeks off. So you don't have to do classes all the time. It's you do your 8-week class, and she'll plan the classes with you, and then 8 weeks off, and then you'll come back, and then you'll adjust to what the women tend to need, and you get a lot of feedback from the women and from staff too, so you can really tailor that course. And then our third option is our mentor option. So when women are in our residential program, they have the option to enter the mentorship program, where they are usually matched in their second or third month in the program to a volunteer who is just their extra layer of support, someone to text, someone to call, someone to meet up for coffee, share good news, bounce ideas off of. It's just an added person to be in their network of reconnection. And sometimes they follow them into aftercare too. Like I have a volunteer who still stays connected with her mentee, and they just check in every once in a while to see how everyone's doing. So you can be all of them, all of these volunteers, or you can just choose which one that you kind of work best with. So that's how we usually get our volunteers. And it's kind of funny. We just had some volunteers who started with us. They do meals every 2 weeks at one of our at our Old Town residents. And they just kind of popped up and they're like, we're your neighbors. We'd like to cook you dinner. So they cook Our Lady's dinner every 2 weeks.
That's great. We don't have nearly as robust a volunteer program. So I am very envious of what you all have built. It's pretty amazing. A lot of inspiration there. So, we have, as I mentioned, the signature kind of volunteer events with the Beautification Day and food drives. And then we've also had kind of like different groups that we've become involved with. Junior League of Washington has done some really amazing programming for us around mindfulness and meditation. A series with some of our residents that has been, it's pretty eye-opening, like how those sessions, like how vulnerable our residents were with these volunteers. So that was really great. And I think, we're always open to that kind of thing. It's tough because I'm the volunteer coordinator in addition to other things. So it's like trying to, in a small organization, it's always like that. So it's like trying to fit it in, and always appreciative when people come to the table with ideas. That's great.
That's great. So I think you talked, sort of previewed this, your answer to this next question in talking about the program that didn't work out. But can you guys describe any challenges the program's faced in building positive relationships with your surrounding community and how you address those challenges? I know so you already shared a little, so I don't know if you have anything else that you would add to that experience.
Yeah, I think definitely because that was kind of an extreme thing, but I think on the flip side of that, because as the mayor kind of really had a push to put more affordable housing into Ward 3, which is where a lot of our programs are based. We've definitely done some outreach with the community, and they're largely very receptive because they know us and they know that we do, we just have a really positive track record. But there have been like a few incidents. There's a new program that we're working on kind of like along the same row in Woodley Park with So Others Might Eat that hopefully will be opening next year. And, I heard some feedback. These are some really beautiful studio apartments, single, that would be taking people off of the coordinated entry list for homelessness in DC. Really great opportunity. And I've had people say like, well, that's really lucky that they get to live in these amazing apartments, on Connecticut Avenue. I'm like, well, they're coming from homelessness. So like, I'm not really sure how lucky that is. I don't think they would describe it like that. And also like, kind of like you all are, Katie and Sonia, like you all are saying, like the house is beautiful, like it should be. People do much better in a really nice environment that they can feel proud of and they can feel good about coming home to. And, there's that dignity is certainly like something that's worth it. So it's still kind of, that, and just addressing, like, let's talk about what this is. And just because somebody gets homeless doesn't mean that they deserve squalor.
And so Friends of Guest House, our two locations are in what I would classify as upscale neighborhoods. But I've been with the organization for almost 5 years. I can't recall any significant complaints or issues that we've had to address. And I've touched on it before, but we are tremendous fixtures in our neighborhood. And we can say, honestly, that we are part of what makes our neighborhoods great places to live. And so we are fortunate, but they are also fortunate to have us there. And I don't feel bad about saying that, because I really believe that. And yeah, so we haven't had any significant issues that we've had to work through, and I'm thankful for that. And the neighbors are wonderful and very receptive to the women. And certainly we have really great relationships with other organizations in the neighborhood, especially churches, and they are really tremendous in making sure that we can continue to operate and be fixtures in the community. They, as Katie mentioned, they provide meals, they provide space. A great part of our space for our organization is held at the church that's across the street from our Luray Avenue. That's where my office is. That's where the workforce classes are in one of the community churches. So we're very lucky. We're very, very lucky in that regard. So
Sonja, I'm going to use that line about like that the community is lucky. I love that. That's exactly right.
Believe that, yes.
I know. Louder for the people in the back. I love it. Can you guys share any success stories of community members who've become advocates or supporters of your program after maybe initially being skeptical or expressing concern about the programs that you run?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned this before, that more and more people are coming to us and saying, you know, like there's somebody who's in distress, like can you help? And we did not experience that before. There's just a different understanding. I think, you know, lockdown did a lot of terrible things to communities, but what it did do is kind of like open up the conversation on mental health. So, you know, that was helpful, and also about police reform. So that, you know, we've, like, in a lot of ways, our communities have dealt with mental illness through our prison system. And so I think there's just a lot more awareness. I've kind of seen people change their tune. You know, there's in Cleveland Park, I don't know how many of you have been through that. There's a man who dances very, very energetically. He's just very enthusiastic about, you know, the music that he hears, and he doesn't hurt anybody. And I think initially there were a lot of people who complained about him, and then the business improvement district, he's not one of our residents, but I just know his story. And the business improvement district folks got together and got him like a broom and dustpan. And so now he like helps out with the businesses there, and because he's part of the community and he has some extra energy. So it's a win-win. And I think that kind of positive move has been really great to witness.
Yes, and I'm not actually able to recall any instances where someone expressed concern or opposition and then made a complete, 180 turn and then supported the organization. But if Katie doesn't mind, maybe she could speak about how others have become involved and how they have sort of stuck with us and become long-term volunteers or really impressed on the lives of the women in our program.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, I think the most concern we have is then just not knowing that we're there. Like, oh, I've lived in this house for 10 years and I didn't realize you were here. I can think of a few volunteers right off the bat. I don't know if I can refer to him by name, but they teach one of our healthy living courses in our workforce and life program, and he's been there longer than me. So I want to say he's been here for like 3 years or more. And he's a pretty active volunteer just in Alexandria in general, but we're really lucky to have him specifically. We've also had another volunteer who used to not only do trainings with our women on substance abuse education, but on our staff as well. So he would come in every month and sit down with staff who were able to make it that morning and answer questions about substance abuse, because he was a long time doctor and had his specialty in substance in recovery. So those are two that I can think of right off the bat. But I know that we've had others who have done resume workshops for years. I'm thinking Ellen and Ron specifically.
Yes.
And they always are just wonderful supporters for everything too, not just coming into workforce, but we've had folks who we had a big welcome basket drive like about a year ago, and we're starting that back up again. So essentially when women enter our program, a lot of times they just have what they have on them. And so we make sure that they have all of their hygiene essentials and changes clothes and everything you would need just for your first 2 weeks at guest house. And a lot of our volunteers came together and donated and created those welcome baskets with us. I can think Ellen and Ronan specifically actually helped us a lot. So yeah, our volunteers turn donors, turn just lifetime supporters, which is really wonderful.
Right. And I'll just add that we have a couple of former volunteers, course facilitators, and mentors who are actually board members now. So
yes.
Wonderful. So what are some of your future plans for, your community, and what are you guys hoping for as you move forward with the programs? What are you excited about to share in the community?
Well, like I shared before, we're approaching our 50th year anniversary, and we hope we are not done or really started in a significant way the planning for that, but certainly there will be some community events that the community will be invited in order to help us celebrate that. We're also planning somewhere in the near future to renovate one of our houses, and that's going to be a significant change for us, but also we want to make sure that the community is happy with the outcome as well. So to a certain degree, we will also be involving the community in that.
And we're really excited that we, last year we got certified to be a permanent supportive housing provider. So again, taking folks off of the coordinated entry list of homelessness. It's been a little rocky trying to hire people, but we're finally staffing up and moving forward with that. So that's very exciting. So when we're able to open the program with some on Connecticut Avenue in Woodley Park, that will be a location for some of those folks. And then in general, we'll be doing kind of the management and overall care of folks in other apartments. So we've got like a lot of expansion on the horizon and another possible building that we're going to acquire. So that was kind of our goal, was to double the number of people we served by 2030, which feels pretty daunting, but I think we're definitely on the road to doing that.
Awesome. I'm excited to see all these things come to fruition for you guys. Rachel, you want to share some of the questions from the chat?
Yeah, we have a couple here, and if you have questions bubbling up, feel free to type them into the chat. The first is from Sandy, and she says, we're considering using our parsonage in Georgetown as a bridge house. We've already had pushback at 2 meetings with our neighbors, and so do you have any advice for us on how to address that neighborhood relationship?
I like Sonja's approach of that you're lucky to have these folks in your neighborhood. But in seriousness, I think that's a very tough situation to be in, and I think kind of gathering goodwill. I mean, I know that the organizations have had like a lot of goodwill in the neighborhood, and kind of bringing in those folks who are very positive about the work that's already been done is and having them speak on behalf is really important. Because it's like everybody internally can kind of say things, but it kind of peer to peer is usually like helpful. And particularly elected officials kind of coming out in favor of something, I think is also really helpful.
And maybe you certainly know the circumstances better than I do, but maybe considering inviting one or two community members to be a part of the planning committee for this, so that they feel that their voice is being heard and feel invested in the outcome. So
great advice. Thank you both. And then Melinda had a question specifically for Sonja. How much of your success do you think is related to the fact that you work with women exclusively and not men?
That's really hard to measure from my perspective, since we have always worked with women. But I think it's safe to say, knowing societal, impressions, women versus men, that maybe the idea of women is easier to accept. The idea of formerly incarcerated women is slightly easier to accept for some people than it would be for men. Although I know that we have sister organizations that serve women and men, and I don't know all of their dealings, but I don't know of any major issues that they have, considering that they serve men.
Formerly incarcerated men.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Sue, are your the folks that you serve, are they a mix of genders?
Yes, so all genders, and it just we only serve adults, so 18 and over.
I had a question just about your funding. Do you receive government funding? Do you have private funding? Do you have a mix of both? How do you support your organization's work?
Yeah, so it's a mix for sure. The biggest piece is really government, both local and federal, and then reimbursements from managed care organizations. Definitely. And then fundraising is kind of a smaller piece of that. And really, that's meant to be for kind of innovation and filling in the gaps of certain programs.
And as far as guest house is concerned, we also have a mix. A significant percentage of our funding comes from a contract that we have with the Virginia Department of Corrections. We also have other agreements and grants that come from local jurisdictions in Northern Virginia. We have a pretty robust grant application program. We rely heavily on fundraising and contributions and other donations as well.
And do you find that you get a lot of support from the community in kind and financial contributions?
Oh, tremendous support. I would say a little less than half of our needs, our financial needs, are met with the DOC contract. The other half comes from contributions and grants and fundraisings and the community. So.
I guess I'll keep going. I don't see any more questions in the chat just yet. But did you ever at any point have like a good neighbor agreement with your neighborhood, or do you have any experience with what that could look like?
Not that I'm aware.
No, and for Friends of Guest House, I'm not aware of having one or having the need to discuss developing one.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then Sandy is asking for both of you, I think, is there a typical length of stay in your program before people get permanent housing? So Sonja, I heard you say 6 months. Is that right? That folks usually stay with?
So those women who are coming directly out of incarceration are with us, live with us for 6 months at either our house on Luray Avenue or a house on Payne Street. After that, they have the option, if we have the resources available, we have limited aftercare housing in the community in Northern Virginia. But if we have a bed or a space available out of the 13 or so beds that we have available, then we're able to rent those to the women on a reduced rate basis. But yeah, I lost track of what I was saying, but I think I answered your question.
Yeah. Just like how
Okay.
long? Yeah.
Mhm.
And for us, it differs by program. So our crisis stabilization program is generally 2 to 4 weeks, which it is kind of woefully inadequate. Mostly that's funded by the DC Department of Behavioral Health, and that's what they allow. Sometimes they extend it. You know, we had a gentleman who was funded to stay for, I think, 4 months, and he then moved on to assisted living and got like the care that he needed. That's kind of the scenario that we'd like to see more of, but it's unfortunately not what we can do. And most of those residents in the crisis program are coming from homelessness, and very often they return to homelessness because there are no other options for them at that point. And then in our group homes, they tend to stay like anywhere from 6 months to a few years. We have one group home, which is 8 residents, kind of happened through circumstances to be a lot of seniors, and those folks have been there for years and years. And then in our apartment program, it really varies, but you know, generally for a few years, folks are in there, and sometimes they, you know, what you would call like graduate onto living fully independently instead of semi-independently. But sometimes they their recovery is not linear, and so sometimes they go back into group homes, particularly as they age and they're not able to continue the same path of their recovery.
Thanks. And Sandy has one follow-up. So are you, have you found landlords who are willing to work with you to provide permanent housing at reduced rates for the folks you serve?
Well, that's a big part. The permanent supportive housing program, that's, you know, the voucher-based program is a big part of that. So that's kind of will be something that we're dealing with a lot more in the future.
Yes, in a guest house, we have community partner organizations that we work with in order to find permanent housing for the women in our program. The housing that we provide is intended to be temporary, and so we do try to put a 18-month limit on your stay there, but use that time to find the permanent housing to help you find the resources and able to do that.
And has it been a challenge for folks to move into permanent housing to find
it's a
things
challenge
that they can afford?
Right, it's a challenge in this area. Some women return, so we serve the entire state of Virginia. A lot of women are going to return back to their original jurisdictions where they're from. But for the women who choose to stay because they grow to love this area, it's a challenge, but one that we are seeking new ways to address and to assure. It's one of our initiatives. One of our things that we really want to focus on is gaining more resources for the women in that area.
Great. Jen asks, what type of house rules do you have for residents, and how are those developed, and how do you help residents adjust if needed? Sonja, do you want to start?
Sure. House rules. What type of house rules? We have a lot of house rules. Let's see. So like I mentioned before, we account for all of the comings and goings. That's a major one. We restrict or limit the amounts of times that the women can smoke. We have rules with respect to the chores that must be shared amongst all of the women, all of the housemates. We have rules with respect to substances that can be brought in, items that can be brought in. to the home. We have just general understanding, especially during COVID. We had lots of restrictions with respect to wearing a mask and having space between one another, which was challenging. Given that we have pretty big houses, once you add 10 to 20 women in those houses, maintaining adequate space could be difficult, but we did as well as we can. So there are many house rules, but there are house rules based on our years of experience and with keeping in mind our need to provide a safe, comfortable environment for everyone who's there. So.
And I would say that we have kind of similar rules, about like when you can do your laundry and, like cleaning up after yourself, that sort of thing. But then also really taking a harm reduction model, like, so we don't allow substances on our premises. So again, if I were going to have a donor event, there wouldn't be no alcohol, like on site, there would be no alcohol allowed there for the same reason. But we really take a harm reduction model to that. So we don't require any length of sobriety to participate in any of our programs, just for that reason, kind of meeting people where they are and, and taking their recovery and the steps that are best for them in mind.
Thank you. Okay, and Sandy is back. So what criteria do you use to put people into different homes? And do people have roommates in these homes?
So we've moved away from roommates because that's in our apartment program. That was where it was most relevant, because that was feedback that we got from residents that they did not want that. And so we actually reduced the number of people we serve by a little bit to kind of take that feedback to heart, that that's what people wanted. They wanted the dignity of their own room. And so be it. And then I'm sorry, the first part of the question was? Oh,
the criteria you use to put people in various homes.
Right. So, I mean, for the crisis program, it's they need to have, be in mental health crisis. They need to not be a danger to themselves or to others. So, we have a psychiatrist who's on contract who would evaluate them. And then, similar for our other programs as well. But, it's just consistently just having that mental health diagnosis.
And I'll just chime in really quickly. Woodley House and GMC use the same psychiatrist. Dr. Grishas is great.
He's wonderful.
He's awesome.
How about you, Sonja? Do you have criteria that you use to select people for the different houses? And do you have roommates?
So in our residential program, it's a congregate living facility. So everyone lives together. There's up to 10 people in the house that's located on Luray Avenue, up to 20 people in our other house on Payne Street. And so some are fortunate to get a single room. Others will have to share in a double or triple room. We have a few triple room. But we have strict guidelines with respect to how much space each person can have. And as it turns out, at our Luray Avenue house, that is most likely the women who are new to the program, who still need time to, get used to their surroundings, get used to the community, who need extra support in navigating around the community, and may need escorts as they go back and forth. So that's at the Luray House, that's most likely people who are newer. Women who have jobs and are volunteering more and things of that nature just happen to live more often at our Payne Street location. Mm-hmm. And as far as our aftercare housing is concerned, we do screen the women for the ability to afford, even at the reduced rate, the rent. We assess whether or not they're ready to be independent on that level. and we provide them resources with respect to financial management and financial literacy in order to build those skills and to ultimately be successful.
Great. Are there any other questions that folks have? I'm just gonna put it back on gallery view so that if folks want to turn their cameras on and just show some appreciation for our panelists tonight. Thank you all so much for what you shared, for the work you do, which is incredibly inspiring, and for sharing with us some of your wisdom and lessons learned and even from the mistakes you've made. We appreciate your honesty and just sharing with us. So I would like to pray us out, if that's okay, and just offer a blessing to you all for your work. So would you pray with me? God, thank you for this time together, for the stories and the wisdom that has been shared here. We thank you for Woodley House and Friends of Guest House and the communities that they come alongside, that they support, that they help in their times of transition. And we just pray that you would give their staff and their community all the strength and resources that they need to continue doing this important, powerful, much needed work for the sake of your community, of your vulnerable children, your beloved people, and for the kingdom that is coming in this world. Bless these folks who've been with us tonight, and may we continue to have open minds and hearts as we work through this discernment process. Amen. Thank you all.